Hello, everybody. My name is Allison Ritz. Thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar, Smarter Growth Decisions, How to Assess and Pursue the Right Government Opportunity. Today, we're thrilled to be joined by Kristen Maycumber, AP&P Fellow and CEO and founder of Summit Strategy. So today, Kristen will be sharing with us the ways to identify, pursue, and win the right opportunities for your organization, along with best practices to align business functions for greater efficiency and success. So I am going to kick things over to Kristen to get started. I'll be here in the background monitoring the chat, and I will jump in at the end because we will be doing some Q&A. So Kristen, again, thank you so much for joining us, and take it away.
All right, thank you. Welcome, everyone. I'm glad to be here today and excited to talk about just making smarter growth decisions, because it's been a crazy year, crazy ride. And what looked like a smart decision last year may not be the same smart decision this year. So looking forward to digging in here. My name is Chris. There we go, the slide took a while to advance. My name is Kristen Maycumber. I am the founder, CEO of Summit Strategy. I've been in GovCon in various capacities for 22, 23 years, I think. I spent 17 of those working in the corporate world for a variety of professional services firms, and then started my own business 4.5 years ago. So we provide marketing, BD, capture, proposals, training, services to government contractors of all sizes across the country. All right, so today we are going to talk about these couple things. So we're going to reset our focus. We're going to talk about how to rethink your strategy, how to fix the machine, that growth machine, how to make some tweaks to it these days, and then just some recommended actions that you'll take, that I recommend taking. And I want you to think as we go through here, you know, what's the 1 or 2 takeaways for you? Because it's always easy to come to these webinars and there's lots of ideas, but then you get back to you hang up, you get back to your day to day, and you get lost in your inbox and your to-do list. So I just want to try to make this super actionable for everyone so that we all walk away with 1 or 2, you know, must-do items on our thought process, so that we can make some of this change and make some of these actions come to life. All right, so I always like to start webinars with some honesty and just kind of do a pulse check. And this is a safe space, so don't feel like you have to, you know, say the PC answer. I want the real answer. So in the attendee chat box, if you can drop your answer. So how would you really, and I mean really, describe your current go, no-go process? So A, if your answer is A, if it has an RFP, we're in, strategies for later. B, we have a checklist somewhere, probably, maybe. C, there's a process, but it depends on who's in the room. We've all been there. We know what that's like. D, we're disciplined, strategic, and possibly mythical creatures. And then E, go, no go, we just call it a Tuesday. So I want to see answers in the attendee chat. Just drop A, B, C, D, E. So that I can kind of get a pulse check of where we are today. And again, this is a safe space, so feel free to give me your real answers. So I'll pause for a second and let everyone drop that into the chat. Oh, hey, Katie. Got a C, got an A. Some C's, lots of C's. Ooh, we've got our first mythical creature. Kathy, awesome. Okay, cool. So lots of C's. So I'll keep an eye on those answers still coming in. So I appreciate that. That always helps me kind of get a feel for where we are today. So let's dive in. And, you know, I've worked with hundreds of firms throughout my career, and I will tell you, most teams and most companies think that they have a vetting process for opportunities, but what they actually have is maybe a Teams chat or a Slack text group, you know, an inbox full of forwarded RFPs or alerts from Deltek GovWin or whatever tools you're using, and then a little bit of a gut feeling. And I don't consider that a go, no go process. I actually like to call that, you know, it's kind of more like a go, 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 and oh, let's go some more process. If there's an RFP, someone's on it, someone's forwarding it. If it looks winnable-ish, it's already, made its way through pink team before anyone has ever stopped to ask the question, is this actually worth it? And can we actually win? So I have been there, I've seen it all. And one of the craziest things, that I think this one wins the prize out of all the go, no go forms and all the processes that I've seen in my life. So it had all the right questions at the top of the form. It asked all the hard stuff. But then at the bottom of the form, it said, when your gut says go, add 200 points. And I mean, I saw that and I was like, okay, we're not going to do that anymore, because who doesn't add 200 points, right? And I really, I got to give them credit. That was the most honest thing that I've ever seen in a scoring matrix. So I was impressed with that. But again, that's how a lot of these decisions get made. It's really just a gut feeling. And I know most things in life tell you to listen to your gut, but I think when we're talking about using our limited time and limited resources on some of these pursuits, when we have a lower chance of winning, it burns out resources and it defeats morale. So I'm not saying not to be, hustly and hungry and get out there and chase some of those things that you may not have positioned for. I'm definitely not saying that, but I do like to have a more rigorous vetting process, just so that we're all going in with open eyes to see what we're walking into. So why are we even having this conversation right now? Obviously, we know the market is not what it was even a year ago, right? There's tons of contracts getting pulled, getting paused, getting canceled. Margins are tighter for firms. Competitors are coming out swinging because there's less opportunities to go after. So if you are still chasing every RFP that hits your inbox without a real clear strategy, you could be wasting time, money, and momentum. And in my opinion, this is really the moment, actually it was a couple months ago, but we're talking now. So we'll say now is the moment to get, focused, to get smarter, and really diversify in ways that actually align with your business and where you're trying to take the business. So again, we're going to dig into that as we go through here. All right. So I want to talk about the real cost of chasing the wrong opportunities. First, is time, right? Your team spends hundreds of hours on a proposal, sometimes that you had no business bidding on. And that's time that you as a business will never get back. Second is money, right? You burn BMP dollars on graphics, on writers, on SME's time, leadership reviews. Sometimes you spend money on consultants like me to come in and help write the proposal. And for what? That, sometimes you're in a 6th place finish and you burned all of those dollars. Third might be morale. So your team gets tired of pouring energy into losing bids, right? None of us are in this career and in this profession to lose. But the more that you lose, the less your team starts to trust the process, and less that's less than they want to engage next time. That doesn't make them feel good, right? They don't want to say, yeah, sure, I'll help write that next proposal, because they've lost so many times. And then the last one is, I think what's most important is opportunity cost. So while you're busy chasing that long shot or that cold RFP, the contract that you might have won if you had, been focused over here might have just slipped through the cracks. Maybe your competitor stayed focused and they stayed on that pursuit and they won that pursuit. And so that opportunity cost, when you divert your attention over here instead of focusing over here, that could add up substantially for you as a company. So again, pursuing the wrong work, it's not just inefficient, right? It can be expensive, it can be demoralizing, and it can be dangerous to your company's growth. So I saw this stat in a report a couple years ago, and it's really just stuck with me. And I couldn't find the report, so I'll keep digging so I can give you guys a copy of it if you want. But I saw the stat that firms waste up to 40% of their annual BNP budget, so bid and proposal budget, on unwinnable opportunities. So if you think about that, that's a huge number. And imagine what your win rate could look like if you just reallocated even some of that time toward better fit pursuits with a real shot at success. So that number really stuck with me. It always has. And again, I think there's a balance. You got to you got to hustle, you got to be hungry, and kind of stretch yourself, but you also have to be really smart with your limited time and limited resources. All right. So we've made the case for why you can't really afford to chase the wrong work. So let's talk about what the right work actually looks like, and let's think about that in terms of fit. And I'm not talking about just technical capability, that kind of fit, not just past performance. I'm talking about like a real strategic alignment with your business, the business you work for, and where that business is trying to go from a growth perspective. So when I say fit, again, I'm not talking about whether you can do the work. I think that's a lot of the kind of first vetting process that I hear a lot. We get an RFP and we say, well, we can do this work, but there's a difference between being able to do the work and being able to win the work. And just because you check those boxes from a scope or technical capabilities perspective does not always mean that you should chase the opportunity. So one of the biggest traps that I see teams defaulting to, again, is something like, we have the quals, so let's go for it. But that mindset really ignores the real world dynamics of pre-positioning, of competitive intel, of pricing pressure that you may not know, of customer relationships, again, resource trade-offs, like that opportunity cost that we just talked about. So fit has to mean, it has to be centered around strategic alignment, not just technical eligibility. And then, I always hear teams get caught up on the actual go, no go process or the tool or the form that you're using. And I don't really care what the tool is or the form. You can have the smartest, most great Excel wizardry document that is like auto calculating your go no go score as you're answering questions, or you can have a multi-million-dollar CRM that has the scoring methodology embedded in it. I don't really care about any of that. I don't care about the form, the format. I care about the strategy, the context, and the timing of making that decision. And to me, making a go, no go decision is not just about filling in the blanks on a form. It's about getting the right people in the room and asking yourself the really tough questions at the right time. So I want to walk through some of those questions, but I just wanted to kind of caveat that a lot of people, when we start talking about go, no go, we get caught up and really focus in and hone in on the form itself. But we all know that you can have the greatest form. You could have a form that no one even uses, right? It doesn't really matter. It's about asking yourself those really tough, hard questions and being honest with yourself in the room. So if I had to boil it down to, what actually matters in making a go, no go decision, I think it kind of centers around these three themes. So there's a strategic theme, an operational theme, and a competitive theme. So from a strategic perspective, again, always keeping your business's goals in mind. Like, where are you trying to go as a business? I've had a lot of conversations with businesses in the last couple of weeks. And one of my first questions is, what's your 3 to 5 to maybe 10-year goal for the business? And a lot of them are, small businesses in the GovCon space. And their answer is always, I'm building this business to be acquired. Well, that's a different growth trajectory and a different mindset than someone that is, a large business already, and maybe they're just trying to pivot into more defense related work or trying to win a spot on a GSA contract vehicle, because we know all roads are leading to GSA. So I always want to get clear on the growth goals and where you're trying to go as a business. And really weave that into our decision-making process way down in the weeds on every single RFP. From an operational perspective, we want to ask ourselves, can we deliver this without wrecking our margins or our team, right? Do we even have the right team? Can we be profitable? We don't want to just buy work. We don't want to lose money, obviously, because that's not going to help our business, especially in austere environments like we're in now. So that's a really hard question to evaluate and talk through. And then lastly, from a competitive mindset, we want to just think about, are we just checking the boxes, or do we actually have a real shot at winning? Do we know who the major players are? Do we know who we're up against? Do we know what value prop we need to have that sets us apart from our competitors? And to me, if you can't really talk confidently about, having a yes to all of these different three kind of themes, it's probably maybe something that you should consider not pursuing. And again, there's no form needed for this. There's no hundreds of questions that we have to answer. It's really just asking ourselves some of these tough questions. So you might be thinking, yeah, those are great questions, but my leadership team always says yes to those. How do I really, really, truly make them stop and think? And I get it. I have been in those rooms. I am in those rooms with our clients all the time where you ask those questions and you, as the proposal manager, whatever your role is, ask those questions to the VPs, the GMs, the CEOs, and they're always like, yeah, absolutely, we know that customer. Absolutely, we can win. Absolutely, we can make money. But they don't want to dig a little deeper. So I get it. I totally understand. But hopefully, I'm going to give you some ways to dig a little deeper. So it's easy to say yes, 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 just move on. And again, that's where I think that bad pursuits get greenlit. And so we want to dig in a little bit more. We want to push further. And again, we don't want to ask questions like, can we bid? We want to ask ourselves if we should bid. And again, it's that opportunity cost that we've got to keep in mind. So these are some of the deeper questions that I like to ask. So from, again, those three themes, from a strategic mindset, are we chasing this just because it's in our wheelhouse, or does it actually move us toward our growth vision? So again, first of all, step one is get clear on what that growth vision is, right? Are you trying to get acquired? Are you trying to break into DoD, whatever it is? What is that big picture goal that you as an organization are trying to achieve? And does this opportunity help you get there? I think that's a really important question, because otherwise you're just distracting yourself with things that are shiny objects, and it's not going to move the needle on the bigger picture for you. And as a small business owner myself, I understand more than the shiny object syndrome. I never thought that I was that person until I started my own business and realized how easy it is to get distracted and get excited about something, and all of a sudden we're over here distracting ourselves from the bigger picture. So I totally get it. But having that question always at front and center of the conversation will hopefully help everyone bring it back to what's important. The second one under strategic fit is an important question too. So would we pursue this if we had 10 qualified leads that helped us get to our big picture vision in our ideal target market with our ideal client? You can modify this question however you want. But I think that's an interesting question, because that gets at that opportunity cost, right? Are we willing to distract ourselves from really great potential wins for this opportunity? So again, just some of these are just kind of ways to make the team think a little bit differently, right? From an operational perspective, what about a question like, can we deliver this with our current team, our current infrastructure, without burnout or backfilling? So again, do we have the right resources, and are they ready to help pursue this? And then obviously, if we win it, do we have the right team to execute? And then secondly, have we done this exact scope and client type and location before and done it well? I mean, we read these RFPs all the time, right? As proposal managers, for those of you that are in those roles, and we see that in the past performance or corporate experience section, they always say must have experience of similar scope, similar complexity, similar, right? And so we always, sometimes in go, no go decisions, we kind of brush over that. But I think making a list, like, okay, if everyone says yes to that, what are the exact past performance or experience projects, contracts that actually meet this exact scope, exact client type, exact location, et cetera. So again, not just accepting kind of a blush high level yes, digging in a little bit deeper. Okay, well then what are those 10 examples? And then from a competitive standpoint, asking yourself, who else is bidding and can we realistically beat them? So again, you have to know who else would be bidding. And again, that's a little tricky right now because everyone's bidding for everything because there's fewer opportunities out there. But again, this is a good question because if this is a no, we have to ask ourselves, okay, should we, are we going in completely cold? And is that the right decision considering all these other questions? And then lastly, I think it's so important to ask, do you have a true advantage that the client cares about, or are we stretching? It's one thing to say, yep, we got win themes, yep, we got value props, but do they actually matter to the client? Does the client care, right? It's that so what factor. And again, not just accepting a simple yes answer, really digging in. Okay, what's the client's hot button? What's keeping them up at night? And then what's the advantage and benefit that we bring that solves that issue and pain point for the client and sets us apart, and differentiates us from our competitors. So again, just some of these questions, you might still get that high level yes, but I'm a big fan of just like digging deeper. And I think as proposal and business development and capture leaders, our jobs are to dig deeper and push people to think about things in a different and unique way. So hopefully these questions start to help frame that out for the team. All right, so let's pivot a little bit and talk about red flags that you'll hear and you'll see, that should make you hit pause immediately and should pause the conversation, and really you should dig in a little bit further. So first, if you don't know the client and they don't know you, that could be and should be a giant stop sign. Cold bidding and responding to RFPs that you found on the internet, it does work every now and then, right? Maybe 5% of the time, maybe 10% of the time. So in 10 bids, you may win one that's cold. But we all know that that's the exception, not the rule. So if the client doesn't know us, if we don't know them, and we've never had any conversations, we don't really truly know what's keeping them up at night, it's really hard to write a great winning proposal that solves those pain points because we don't know what the heck those pain points are. Next, if no one on your team actually wants to own the pursuit, that could be your gut screaming no. So listen to it because, again, a disengaged team won't win, right? And we want our team to feel passionate about winning and put their all into it. Otherwise, it's going to be a half-assed proposal, right? If pricing is your only strategy, you might be setting yourself up to lose profit and lose morale. So again, I think that differs on whether it's the lowest price technically acceptable, pursuit or best value. But we can't just rely on coming in bottom dollar. We've got to know how to answer those pain points for the client. And then, of course, we talked about this. We've all heard this one. We're going after it for experience. No, that's what internships are for, not proposals, right? We don't want to write proposals just to get experience writing proposals. Go get an internship to get experience in something. We want to write winning proposals that move the needle on our business's growth goals. If there's a strong incumbent, and again, I'm not against going after things where there's an incumbent. I've unseated incumbents my whole career. But the key thing there is you have to know if the incumbent is performing well and if the client loves them or hates them. You have to have that intel, and you've got to have a great reason to pursue that. Just being qualified is not enough, because if the incumbent's been in there, the incumbent's doing great, the client loves them, that incumbent is more than likely going to win that recompete, right? But if we know that the incumbent has performed terribly, they've lost staff, they've pissed off the client, whatever it may be, we always want that intel to go in eyes wide open to that pursuit versus just being cocky and saying, yeah, we've got the same quals as that incumbent. No, you actually don't have the same quals because you haven't worked on this program before. You don't have that past performance that the incumbent does. So again, just things to think about. And then finally, if the RFP reads like someone else already won it, you're probably right. And again, unless you have a way in, your energy might be better spent elsewhere. So again, the bottom line, these are red flags. They may not always apply to every situation, every company, every pursuit. But the goal here is to recognize a red flag for what it is and don't talk yourself into it. Teach yourself how to walk away from things that have too many red flags, especially because that could be a strategic decision for you as well. So just something to think about as you're having these conversations. All right, so I've talked about, how to vet, how to ask the tough questions. So now what? Like, where do we go from here? What are we actually supposed to do instead? So walking away from an opportunity doesn't mean that you're missing out. It just means that you're making room for better fits. So I want to talk about, what to do when an opportunity isn't right, right? So it's not just about like saying no, it's about really having that smarter process. And this is what we're talking about today in general, is just having a smarter process that helps you say yes to the right things, and helps you build a pipeline that just doesn't suck the life out of your team. So some of these things we know, but it's good to like kind of bring it back to the basics sometimes, because we try to overcomplicate our go no go process. We try to overcomplicate our proposal pursuit process in general, and sometimes just bringing it back to the basics, especially in a market like today, just helps kind of build a healthier team and a healthier pipeline. So position before you pursue, like the more ahead of the RFP you can get in terms of chasing clients, not projects. When we're just responding to RFPs, we're chasing contracts and projects. And instead, we need to be building relationships, chasing clients that, again, align with our business's growth goals. Second, focus on your must-win criteria. So get super clear as a business, what are those must-win criteria? Does it have to be for one of your key clients? Does it have to be in a certain geographical region? Does it have to be a certain dollar value? Just get really super clear as an organization what those decision factors are, and make every decision centered around that. The third one is use past debriefs and intel. We always do a great job of asking for a debrief, having a debrief. Sometimes we take time to discuss that debrief intel that we get, but then tomorrow it's out the window, out the door, in one ear and out the other, because we are back to our day jobs and we don't have time to really sink that information into our process and affect change. So take a moment, if you have some downtime, to go back through some recent debriefs and intel that you've gathered, and just, again, make it actionable. Don't just say, yep, that was great to know, and move on. How can you weave that information that you gathered, that valuable information, into affecting change in how you vet opportunities, how you pursue clients, how you build proposals, whatever it may be. But really just think about that. And then the fourth one kind of ladders up to the first one, but shift time to pre-RFP activity. So make sure that your team has responsibilities for pre-RFP, and get super clear on who owns that within your team and what those expectations look like. It's one thing to say, yeah, we should always be, doing capture and positioning and building relationships, whatever, building our strategy ahead of the RFP. It's one thing to say that, but it's another thing to actually have job responsibilities, KPIs, discussions about it regularly, for everyone on your team or for certain roles on your team. So I'll talk about that in a minute, but just get super clear on who owns that and what that really looks like. And then the fifth thing is to refine your pursuit system. So how you actually pursue work. So whether that's changing your go, no go criteria that we just talked about, or shifting, how you write drafts because of the intel that you're gathering. So just take a moment to kind of do a fresh perspective look at your pursuit system and what's working, what's not, and how can you affect some positive change in your system. All right. So I'd be remiss if, I didn't address the elephant in the 2025 year that we're in, right? The elephant in the room. So this is not just a pipeline problem that I'm talking about. Like, your pipeline isn't just broken; it's a market problem, right? It's your pipelines are messy. They might be really empty right now, right? Because there's just not a lot of opportunities flowing the way that it normally would this time of the year. And so the old approach of, that philosophy of bid more, win more, just doesn't work in a market like now where there's not as much opportunity. So again, in 2025, it's a crazy ride, right? So we're facing fewer funded opportunities. There's a lot more noise out there than normal. There's brutal price pressure. Everyone's watching their capture rates drop, and it's not just because teams forgot how to chase. Like everyone knows what to do, but the reality is, the market's just shifting and a little bit nuts right now. Excuse me. So the reality is this year, like this is the year, right? This is the time where you have to stop chasing everything and you have to really double down on positioning and double down on a strategy. And your pipeline should feel, in my opinion, just uncomfortably focused. It should make you uncomfortable how focused it is. Because if it doesn't, you're still playing that volume game. And that's a game that just doesn't exist this year. You're going to lose that game because it's just not the same kind of market. So I get it. Teams are lean. Staff have been laid off. I've met with a ton of companies lately that their growth teams, whether it's the BD capture proposal, like they've laid that whole team off because they just can't sustain it. That's a different conversation for a different day of whether that's the right decision to make or not as a business owner. I know as a business owner, sometimes you make the best decision you can with the information you have, but I'm not a big fan of just letting your whole growth team go because growth is so vital to your business. But that's a different conversation. So in that environment, where you've got less people, you've got less dollars, less clients, less opportunities, focus can sound like a luxury or it can sound really scary. But it's not. Focus doesn't mean slowing down. It means being super clear about where to channel those limited resources, where to channel your limited time. So this is not about being passive. You still have to hustle. And if anything, you got to hustle more. You have to be out there shaping, calling, following up, influencing. But having scattered energy is going to break your team. And if you even have a team left, right? But focused hustle is what's going to save it. And so that, to me, is the mindset of 2025, focused hustle. So how do we do that? What does that really look like? Your BD team just doesn't have the luxury of chasing everything right now, right? There's not even that much to chase. So if your team's calendar is full of like relationship building stuff, but you can't draw a straight line from that activity to a priority account or to a contract vehicle that you actually want to win on, you're wasting your time. So every hour that your team spends should map to one of two things. One, a key account that's central to your growth strategy. Two, a contract vehicle that opens the doors to multiple task orders. And that's where I have to reiterate, like all roads are leading towards GSA, right? We hear it all the time. So whether it's the GSA schedule, Oasis Plus, folding soup in, we saw PAX 3 get canceled because it's going to be leveraged on Oasis Plus. So obviously, we've seen where the government's heading. So if you're not aligning your pipeline to those vehicles where all the money is going to flow, you're going to get left behind. So when you start having this conversation to decide where to focus your BD time, you have to ask yourself, is this helping us grow deeper into an account that we can actually scale? Is this helping us position for a vehicle that will feed us, if we do it right, in the next 5 to 10 years? Or is this just activity, BD activity, capture activity, whatever, for the sake of activity? So just getting super clear with your team on what are those priority accounts, what are those contract vehicles that we need to win, and every activity has to tie to one of those two things. And then in addition to federal, I also think it's really important to take a hard look at SLED, so state and local. And a lot of firms, ignore this, or they treat it like plan B or C or D, especially if before 2025 you were a pretty strong federal contractor. SLED is kind of not a thing for companies that have been in heavy federal. But if you're serious about focused hustle, I think that SLED should be part of that proactive strategy. So I'm confident that money is still moving through state and local agencies, especially in things like infrastructure, emergency management, cybersecurity, education, public health, things that the federal government is really pushing down to the state. And at the state and local level, buying cycles are faster. The awards are more nimble, and sometimes it's less crowded than the federal space. I don't know if it's still less crowded because I keep having I'm doing a ton of webinars and content talking about, pushing federal contractors into SLED. So there's definitely more and more getting into it, but there's tons of opportunity there. And again, if you're already positioned with the right registrations, pricing, small business certifications, you're ahead of most. So it's really just about figuring out where you can fit best into SLED. And again, having a strategy. You can't just go on the internet and start responding to RFPs. I'm not suggesting that one bit, but having a strategy to get into SLED and getting serious about it instead of just like oh, that'd be nice to have. Yeah, if we see anything pop up, we'll do it. But really having that focused hustle, again, is what's going to move the needle for you as a business. All right, so whether your approach is federal or SLED, again, you can't wait until proposals start flying to build the proposal machine. So if you don't have the proposal machine already in place, you're again going to be behind the 8 ball. And again, this is a year where fewer opportunities are dropping, more companies are competing, technical evaluations are tightening, there's more and more orals, versus written narrative proposals. So this means that sloppy last minute Frankenstein proposals just aren't going to cut it. So now is the time to do things like building your content library, locking in writers and reviewers and what that process looks like, tightening that internal process, clarifying roles, decision, making rights and who's responsible for what decisions. And, you can't scale without a system. So really putting that right system in place is important. So the companies that, to me, that are going to be successful coming out of this year are spending this time refocusing their BD efforts and then building that machine right now so that when RFPs do start flowing, we've got that machine down and that machine is built and ready to go versus having to, fly the airplane while we're also building the airplane. Don't advise that. All right, so everything that I probably just talked about sounds great in theory, right? But, we got to be real. I like to keep it real. None of this works if your BD team is rowing one way, if ops is rowing the other way, and if your execs are, watching from the shore, or worse yet, chasing their own shiny objects, because we all know that happens regularly. So to do all of this stuff, you're going to need cross-functional buy-in, and not just to agree in theory, yeah, that sounds great, but to really align on what we just talked about, the accounts that matter, the clients, the customers that matter, the strategy you're pursuing, and the process you're following. So here's some ideas of how to get there. One is get everyone in the same room, preferably in person, if you can. If not, a Teams or Zoom will do, but it is so much better if you can just get everyone face to face. We all know the difference that makes. And I'm not talking about, a meeting where we're just kind of having a status update. I am talking about a real working session on how you win, and how you need to adapt what you're doing to fit the model of 2025. Assign ownership. So who's responsible for shaping? Who's responsible for writing? Who's making the bid, no bid, or go, no go decisions? Just get super clear on roles and responsibilities, again, within this new environment that we're living in. And then I really like that third one, define what good looks like. If strategic growth means something different to every team member, you're sunk, because again, everyone is distracted and disjointed. So you have to get clear on, for 2025, what does a good year look like for us? Because it's not going to look the same as, what a great year in, 2024 or 2023 looked like. So get clear on, at the end of this year, what does good look like? And let's all move towards that. And then set the rules and follow them. It's one thing to have the conversation and then again, go back to our day-to-day job and just forget everything that we discussed. So get serious about, again, that go, no go criteria, who's making those decisions, who's owning which piece of the process. And don't let yourselves make exceptions just because someone's excited, because there's always going to be something to get excited about. And again, unless it moves the needle on a key customer that you're targeting, a contract vehicle that you're targeting, or your overall growth strategy as a business, then you have to get clear that that's distractions versus something that you should really invest your time and resources in. All right, so I've talked a lot about focus, and this is the last kind of piece of this, and then we'll stop for questions. I've talked about aligning your BD activities with real targets, right? The real customers, the real contract vehicles that you need to get serious about. We've talked about, needing that cross-functional buy-in between the BD team, the ops team, the leadership team. But here's another place that a lot of companies and teams still get stuck. They treat business development, marketing, and proposals like separate functions, separate teams, separate goals, separate systems. And to me, that disconnect really kills momentum for a business. And again, especially in a year like 2025, where your pipeline is thin, funding feels really unpredictable, your team is stretched, whoever's left, you can't afford silos. You can't afford everyone to be working in their own lane and not communicating, not rowing together in the same direction. So that's what I mean when I have that, growth engine, one growth engine there on that slide. So BD, marketing, proposals, all working together, not in parallel, but as one integrated, focused system. All right, so let's talk about what that actually looks like in theory. So BD is not just going to be out chasing RFPs. They have to be feeding the pipeline with intel, with relationships, with real-time feedback. Marketing's job is to make sure that you're known before those opportunities. So visibility and credibility, that equals influence. So the more that we can focus on our marketing efforts, less for the sake of just great marketing, right? Focus our marketing on supporting our sales goals and supporting key customers, key contract vehicles, make sure that everything we put out from a marketing perspective is laddering up to those business development and growth goals. And then proposals is where it all comes together, right? We've got the strategy, we've got persuasion, we've got proof. That's the close. So if these three things are not aligned in your organization, you could be wasting time, money, energy. But when they're synced together, that's when you win. And that's when it's going to be faster. You're going to win more often. You're going to have less chaos because it's a machine that is working together and operating together. So misalignment, when we start thinking about this, it's not always obvious, right? Like we may think that all three of those functions in our organization work together really well. And it may not be obvious that your growth engine is misfiring. So it could show up as spinning wheels, as duplicating effort, or just a whole lot of frustration. So whether like the BD team is chasing opportunities that are cold or dead or ghosted, marketing may be putting out content that never sees daylight. Proposals could be reactive and rushed. And then leadership starts asking the question, like, what are we even doing around here? So if this feels familiar or sounds familiar, your growth engine isn't broken, it's just out of sync. So we've got to put it back together and again, moving in the same direction. So this is where you can kind of find the breakdown. And again, most firms think that they're aligned until they ask these questions. So this is a great exercise to do with your team, just to see how aligned you are. So for BD perspective, if we can't answer where we're going, obviously marketing's not going to be able to support that. So can we name our top 10 priority pursuits for the next 12 months and why they matter to us as an organization? Are we shaping opportunities early, or are we just reacting to what hits the internet in terms of sam.gov or whatever portal you use? Do we know what contract vehicles give us the best shot? And are we building our game plan now to get on those contract vehicles? Or if we're on those vehicles, are we leveraging them? From a marketing perspective, do we have thought leadership or visibility tactics tied to those exact pursuits or agencies? Are we helping the BD team get meetings and build credibility, or are we just posting something to post it? And then do we know our differentiators for each key customer account? And are we saying them out loud? And then from a proposal perspective, are we part of the pre-RFP strategy, or are we just the last minute fire drill? I always say that the proposal piece is the last 20% of the process. There's so much that has to happen before we start writing a proposal. So if your proposal team is just getting engaged when the RFP hits, you've lost a huge opportunity to move the needle in a different way. And then secondly, are we tailoring every response to the buyer's pain points, or are we just checking those compliance boxes? Are we just writing a compliant proposal, but not a compelling proposal? And then do we track lessons learned and win themes across our submissions and actually use them? All right, so we covered a lot today. And, you're not going to fix everything overnight. You can't do it all at once, but you do have to start somewhere. So I kind of dissected down everything we talked about into what I would consider a potential path forward for you if you wanted to implement some of these things that we've talked about. So first is pick your top 5 pursuits for the next 12 months. And if it's not a priority, stop wasting time on it. If it's not one of those pursuits, again, that's tied to a key customer or a key contract vehicle, stop wasting your time. Again, get uncomfortably focused. Second is get those BD, marketing, and proposal teams in the same room. Seriously, in the same room where we're all talking together. We shouldn't be scared of each other. Alignment is just not optional anymore. So we have to get in the same room. We've got to have these tough conversations. Take time to audit your last 3 losses. Be brutally honest with yourself. What did you miss? Why? And how can you action that forward? Instead of just saying like, yeah, that was, that was a fluke, or we'll get it next time. It's great to have that blind optimism, but we want to take our lessons into actions. And then build a pre-RFP shaping calendar for fiscal year 26, right? So fiscal year 25, we're in our last quarter. We know that, a lot of this is just kind of wait and see what happens with the government, but you can't really wait and see, right? So figure out, again, those key customers, key contract vehicles. What are your real BD goals for fiscal year 26, and get super serious about what that calendar and activities look like. And then chop that zombie pursuit, get it out of the way. The one, the one that's on the pipeline that everyone keeps talking about, but it just won't die. It sucks up time. There's no shot at winning. You're just spinning wheels. Get it out of the way. Chop the trees. We just went through an exercise as my own business to just get some things out of the way, because it was on our Asana board, things that just weren't a priority anymore. And that's okay. Priorities shift and change. And it's perfectly fine to say, no, that's not a priority anymore. Get it out of the way, because otherwise you're just distracting yourself. So again, start small, start focused. You got to start somewhere, but start right now. Because if you wait until the market rebounds and the government gets its what together, we might be waiting for a while, and it'll be too late at that point. So get serious about what change and what actions you need to take the business to move it forward, to do some of what we talked about today, so that you can move the needle and you're not just stuck in that let's wait and see mode. All right, so I want to get some perspective here in the chat. So again, if you want to drop in the chat, I would love to just know, like, from everything that we talked about today, what's the one thing that your team needs to fix after today? So if you have thoughts, and maybe this will help spur some ideas for others in the room. So please drop some ideas in the room or in the chat of what you think that one thing is. Like, if you had to boil it down, one takeaway from today, what is it that you'll do that will help really move the needle? So I'd love to see that in the chat. And then I think we'll pause here for questions. This slide has my contact info, so feel free to reach out. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. That QR code there goes straight to my calendar. So if you need help, want to talk, whatever, you can open up your camera, scan that, schedule time on my calendar. But I think we'll pause here and see what questions we got.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Christian. So much good information. And just before we jump into questions, quick housekeeping. We had a couple folks ask in some different spots about the recording and the information that was shared today. And everybody that registered will receive a recording, so you can reference back, as well as Kristen's contact information. Okay, so we have a couple questions. I'll go ahead and start. So for customers who are looking to expand into new or broader areas, like you said, less opportunities, folks are maybe looking to think outside the box and do something a little bit different. How can teams identify opportunities that may be outside of their current core capabilities, but are still potentially winnable? So basically, how do you expand reach without wasting your time?
Yeah, I think it's just getting super clear on what that expanded reach looks like, whether it's a new sector altogether, like if you've just been in civilian, you need to get into DoD, or if you've just been federal, you need to get into SLED. Like get super clear on what that kind of pivot looks like, and then get even like 100 layers down, and figure out within those sectors, like what does a good customer look like? I think sometimes we don't pause and like ask ourselves that question. What does a good customer look like for us? And what are the criteria of a good customer? And figure that out first before you start doing market research, searching, by NAICS codes or whatever to see who's buying what you sell. I think just ask those kind of big picture questions first and get clear on that. And then just make sure that it ladders up to where your business is trying to go. Again, whether you're trying to be built for an acquisition, whether you're trying to be built for a new joint venture or a certification, leveraging a certification you may have that's dusty and underused. So I think it's just getting clear on all those things first before you even start looking at RFPs or opportunities, kind of asking some of those tough questions that we went through today, and then getting to the point of starting to respond. But the truth of the matter is, like, when you do break into a new market, a new client type, whatever, it does take a long time. It's a long game, right? And you are going to be pursuing things a little bit colder, and you're going to be pursuing things that you didn't pre-position for, and that's okay. It's as long as you're clear that the reason we're doing this is for a reason, not just because we see something on the internet and decide, oh, let's just, all of a sudden pivot and spin our wheels. Like there has to be a reason for kind of going in to a brand new customer, brand new market, and just having eyes wide open as you do that.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. That again, just not being reactive and making sure that everything you're doing is strategic and you know what a good outcome looks like, not just kind of taking a shot.
Yes.
Okay, so when we talk about differentiators in a market that's so competitive with less opportunities, it's really important to differentiate yourself and put your best foot forward in your solicitation responses. So when you're asking yourself, can we really beat these likely competitors? What should we be focusing on in order to communicate our capabilities in the most impactful way?
Yeah, it's a great question. And you're right. Like it's getting harder and harder to differentiate. Like we have a ton of clients that do like IT and cyber and stuff. And it's like, there's thousands of those companies at this point. So finding a way to differentiate yourself is hard. But I think it all comes back to what the customer cares about. And you've got to know that first. Like it's not just enough to differentiate from your competitors. You've got to figure out what the customer actually cares about. And then do you solve that problem differently than others? So it has to be that question first. And then, we saw like earlier this year with all the Doge stuff and all of that happening, like the government, if you're not able to, especially when we talk about federal government, if you're not able to clearly articulate the value and the impact that you are making, whether it's saving them time, saving them money, putting more efficiency together in your process, however you're helping that customer solve their problems and make their lives easier, make them look good to the people above them, then you can have the greatest statement in the world in your case statement in your proposal, but it's not gonna, if it doesn't show that impact and value that you bring and how you're helping their bottom line, it's not gonna matter. So I think it all gets crystal clear around what your customer cares about and the impact that you make for them.
Awesome. No, that's a great answer. Thank you so much. So we talked a little bit in the first question about transitioning to new markets. So if a customer is, say, okay, we're doing federal work, we are going to find someone on the state level agency, and they're looking at an opportunity. Agency is very similar, work is very similar,
Yep.
all these things check the boxes for us. What are some pitfalls in making that transition that you've seen folks have? Like, it seems pretty straightforward. What
Mhm.
are the things that are a little bit unexpected?
I think one of the pitfalls and one of the things that people kind of gloss over is they expect it to be the easy button. Like, oh, we have all
Mhm.
this past performance on the federal,
Yeah.
we can just start responding to RFPs at the state level
Mhm.
without really digging in and understanding how state decisions are made. A lot of states have pre approved vendors on kind of master services agreements that are 5, 10 years long. And so that's what all the work flows through.
Mhm.
And so, not kind of going into that with eyes wide open and understanding how that market buys and how decisions are made. I think you'll spin a lot of wheels and burn a lot of time and money just starting to respond to RFPs. So if you're breaking into SLED, we don't want to just start responding to RFPs. We want to take it up a notch first and understand the market, how they buy, and again, what a good customer looks like, without just, it's not just, it's, you can't just hit an easy button. Like
Yeah.
I'd be in a different profession. I'd be a millionaire on an island if I knew how to just hit the easy button and all the money just starts flowing, right? So it's you got to have a
Exactly.
game plan and strategy.
For sure. Um, so the last question I want to ask, and I know that this is the $1 million question kind of that everybody's chatting about all the time, that
Mhm.
so what are your thoughts based on your experience on the longer term impact of the move to heavier GSA involvement, and when do you think this will stabilize?
That is the $1 million
Yeah.
question. Yeah, I have an article drafted right now on my LinkedIn that I haven't published yet. But it's kind of crazy, right?
Mhm.
GSA has like quadrupled their
Mhm.
portfolio. They keep adding more vehicles in, and then they've let go a third or a fourth or whatever
Yeah.
of their staff. And so it's like I don't know how that's gonna go well. It's not gonna go well, right? And we already see it. Like we've already seen all the procurements just get canceled, pause. Like it's just a hot mess.
Mhm.
I think it's going to take a little bit to stabilize. I think it's not going to be maybe till mid fiscal year 26, maybe in
Mhm.
fiscal year 26. I don't know. I hope. I try to be optimistic because I have to be, right? Because I live in this world, and I want our clients to feel positive and optimistic too. But the the truth of the matter is it's super messy right now, and
Yeah.
it's not getting better anytime soon. It's going to get worse before it gets better, I think, which is the cold hard truth and not great,
Yeah.
but I think that's really what it is.
Well, and it's fair. And I think that, realistically, we all need to kind of assess the current situation and be prepared to work
Yep.
within it. So I think that
Yep.
talking about some of the messiness and talking about the challenges that people are having is really
Mhm.
important.
Yep. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate this. Was great information. We had some great interactivity in the chat.
Awesome.
And like I said, we'll be sharing the recordings and making sure everybody can connect with Kristen after for follow up conversations if you wish. But again, thank you everybody for joining us today. Thank you, Kristen, for
Of
all of the
course.
excellent information. And I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of your day and look out for some follow up from the VT team.
Awesome. Thank you all.
Thanks so much.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.